you, everyone. I'm really happy to be able to have this event as part of our social justice initiative on the Davis campus. Professor Majid Shehad is willing to have us visit with you all who are the students to hear how you're doing in the class. And I don't remember the exact name of the class, but I know it's been an opportunity to Middle Eastern and South Asian studies. And it's a comparative, of course, it's a comparative perspective on Palestine and indigenous peoples in North America? All around. Okay. All around. And so the theme of this year's social justice initiative is global indigeneity. So we're doing everything we can to reach out beyond Native American studies and make sure that we're inclusive of everyone who's doing work on indigenous peoples in any kind of fashion throughout the campus. So I'm very happy and we're honored that you are going to be a part of this and have your students be a part of what we're doing with this initiative. So thank you, and we look forward to everything you have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. for having us, and thank you all for coming. It will be a different way of presentation today because I'll speak only for 5 minutes, sharing with you why I use this framework to teach about Israel and Palestine and what's the use of it. And then some of the students in the class will intervene to add what did they think of the class, of the framework, what did they learn from the text, and the films that we watched in the class. I will make a general remark in general, and I think, after myself studying Middle Eastern studies, I've taken many courses on Israel and Palestine. I thought, from my experience, and from my knowledge, and from my own growing up in Palestine, that other approaches that we encounter all around this country participate in one way or another in a process of denial and amnesia. And thus, I think they are highly political and partisan. This is because I think all other approaches avoid to talk about the structure that takes place in Israel and Palestine. Thus, they are not helpful in understanding what's happening in Palestine and Israel, and also they lead to further justification, confusion, and also apathy among the general public. The comparative framework is also useful in my view. It is while teachers about Palestine, it goes on familiar cases that students can make connections with. They are much more familiar, for example, in this case in the US, with settler colonialism in the United States. And thus, you can make, from studying about Palestine to the same framework, some connections, comparisons, similarities, and understand what's happening in Palestine in a better way. But this also creates, in my view, especially around the issue of Israel and Palestine, that is highly surveilled and repressed area in the academy. Creating this comparative framework allows studying settler colonialism in Palestine and Israel to, let's say, the United States, creates a distance for students to be much more objective and less partisan in the way they understand and study the history of Israel and Palestine. These are my main kind of reasons why I use this framework. And it's brief. I'm willing to discuss some of the points I mentioned here. Some have questions about them. But I will leave about maybe 15 to 20 minutes of time for the students to make remarks on this framework, share with us what are the texts that we learned, because we used literary texts, we used social science texts, we used humanities texts on Israel, Palestine, Australia, Canada, the US. We watched also the documentaries in the class. And how all these sources should people to further understand Israel and Palestine, but also what connections it made with the history of settler colonialism and the dynamics of settler colonialism in
Okay, so one aspect of the course that I thought, my name is Esteban. One aspect that I thought was really good in the course is that we went into the matter of genocide for Churchill. And his framework is really, as you can see, the overlap is one of his main points. He talks about like Holocaust denial in the 20th century. His main issue, when he took up was what happened to the Native Americans here in North America. And then he kind of talked about the Holocaust that happened to Jewish people. And then he kind of said, basically a lot of his arguments were counteracting a lot of the stuff that was coming out, like about denial of the actual numbers of people that died in North America. And his greater thing about this is it's like he wants to be more structural, how we see things play out and what's the importance of actually having denial, and not just denial specifically, but also exclusivity. When we choose to have any Holocaust or any happening to be exclusive, to say there's nothing else that has happened like this on the rest of the globe, and if you dare to compare it to this, then what you're doing is you're actually minimizing what happened to our people or what happened to these people. And he basically says that what I got out of the book is he has an ending of his chapter that he talks about Hannibal Lecter, and he says basically we're all in the room with Hannibal Lecter. And Hannibal Lecter is basically, we're enchanted by the way he's killing us, but we're unable to unmask him. You know, so he tries to take it to the next level to not just stay focused on, oh, it's this person or this president. It's more like a structural analysis that has to take place. That I thought was one of the good things I learned about it.
Sorry, what was your name again?
Esteban.
Esteban?
Yeah.
You know the word Churchill is thoroughly, like, he's not native, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
We need like the first like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just making sure you know.
My name is Adina. So one thing I took from the course is like just learning about the structure of colonialism and knowing that colonialism in itself is institutionalized violence, and specifically talking about Israel-Palestine, settler colonialism, and how it's an exclusionary racist state. One of the books that we read was The Holy Land in Transit by Stephen Slater, and he makes parallels between the Zionist immigration and colonization of Palestine and the European settler colonialism here in North America, and between like the Native Americans, the displacement of the Native Americans. And, basically, what I took from that book is how the colonizers come in with an image that they're the heroes. They're saving the savage, barbaric people from their ways, and they're bringing in different types of technology and infrastructure. They're just making the land more wealthier and more efficient, but in actuality, the wealth of these people come from the land that they stole, the labor of the people, and not only that, but specifically talking about Israel, the billions of dollars of aid they receive. And then another aspect of the book is the natural resistance of the colonized people. So talking about in Palestine, the Palestinians using whatever, like people often criticize Hamas, but what they need to understand is it's a natural reaction to the occupation that they've undergone for so many years. So it's basically an armed struggle against the state violence. And here in North America, talking about like the Native American attacks on the European villages, well, that's a natural reaction as well, because they have their land being stolen from them, they're being killed and displaced as well.
Okay, I'm Imran. So one of the things that I learned in this class and other Middle East South Asian classes about settler colonialism is that one feature of settler colonialism is that what the West does is they attribute absolute otherness to the natives or the settlers that they try to colonize, and what that does is they put them in a framework where they're backward, uncivilized, savage, and barbaric, whereas the West is the opposite, they're civilized, modern, and unknowable to the other. And when they put them in this other category, this erases, they puts them into a vacuum, and their entire history, their identity, and their customs and their traditions turns into a sort of nothingness. And what that nothingness does is allows for like a sort of cultural anesthesia to allow Western civilization or settler colonial structure to subjugate and put them in a position of servitude and allow for them to be colonized and subjugated and oppressed. And this is like the dominant discourse when the when the colonizer talks about the colonizer, go, oh, well, they weren't here before, they were savage, they were this, so it's okay to do that to them. So that's just like one of the features of like settler colonialism that we're learning about.
My name's Carissa, and going off of Imran's comment and what Edina mentioned in terms of nationalism, we've kind of learned in this class that there are 3 different ways that settler colonies establish like the intention, the claim to intention, which is like A, to improve or better the territory and its people, aka to civilize. B, there was no one there, like Terra Nullius, one of the books we read was about the colonization of Australia, so there was no one there in the first place, like the indigenous population is too small to really account for, and that like isn't what the US, Australia, and Canada are. And then C, there's no place to go but there, the kind of thing, and like that is, and they neglect to mention the native population by doing so. If the story begins with a triumph, like put the Jewish state here, like that's Israel, and it's like these situations with the US, Canada, Australia, and Israel, they are all the same, but they all happen in different circumstances and contexts. So like there are differences in the way they develop. So for example, in one of our books, the book by Alkins and Peterson, which book is that? Right. They talk about a new nationalism. And so the difference here, so for example, why Israel is different is that they couldn't have said there was no one there because this is the middle of the 20th century and we know that there are people in Palestine. So it couldn't be like a no one's land kind of place. Like there's too much media surrounding it. You know that there is a country here. And so the difference in the nationalism that was established in Israel, that there was a nationalism that was kind of a part of like this like alleged racial bond and also religious bond. And so there's like a nationalism before the nation state was created, as opposed to a nationalism that developed once the nation state had created.
John, also going on to the settler colonialism in the 20th century, one of the things that we really emphasized, and one of the quotes I really liked was invasion is a structure, not an event, and that really, I think, kind of also shows the focus of this class. It's on the structure of settler colonialism, which is kind of the ongoing invasion. There's the settler colonialism doesn't set limits to its invasion, and it keeps spreading. And it also it's not aiming for coexistence. It's aiming for elimination. And that doesn't mean necessarily by killing everyone, but also through assimilation. One of the quotes was extermination and assimilation were the same sides. They're over 2 sides of the same coin. So I think for me, like the biggest thing about this class is we weren't trying to focus on this example, but what they all had in common, which is the structure of settler colonialism.
To bounce off of the structure that we're discussing, one of the books that I really enjoyed reading was by Fiance, and it's Zionist Colonialism in Palestine. And in his book, he talks about the brutality against the Palestinians by the Zionist movement since its birth. And he focuses on the settler colonial structure, which is responsible for the past, continued, and future subjugation of Palestinians by Israelis. And in there, he discusses that the creation of Israel and its existence today is one of permanent racism, violence, and expansionism, where the indigenous people are deprived not only of its inalienable rights to self-determination, but also of its elemental right to exist on its own land. And so he continues to discuss this structure that is in place and will continue to be in place until it is dismantled. He talks about how this differs from other colonial efforts because for Zionism, colonization is the instrument of nation building and not the byproduct of an already fulfilled nationalism, especially as it pertains to the Zionist racial self-segregation, exclusiveness, and supremacy. And then lastly, he concludes by stressing how deeply embedded the elimination of the Arabs is within the Zionist settler colonialism structure, and he uses the systematic oppression of the Palestinians and the neighboring Arabs from the Zionist doctrines of racial self-segregation, racial exclusiveness, and racial supremacy.
Is that it?
Okay, so maybe now we could open,
So, hi guys,
questions and answers.
so I'm
You
a,
could say who you are.
yeah, my name's Ryan Belrose. I'm a Métis, which means I'm an Indigenous Canadian. So actually, my nation is from a place called the Red River in Canada. We were actually forcibly displaced from our land. So I have a few issues with some of the stuff that's being said today. The big one was from Esteban. He's quoting Ward Churchill. Ward Churchill pretended to be Native. I don't know if you guys all know that. He was telling everybody he was Native American. And he used that to gain legitimacy. And you know, some of his arguments are actually legit. We don't like people comparing our genocide to their struggles. The main reason being the genocide of the Native North American, probably the most hideous event in the history of the world. We're talking 65 million, that was our population, they think, pre-colonial, and dropped down to about 2 million. So that's a pretty hideous event. I think we can all agree. So we don't like when people compare other genocides, especially when we don't feel that they're a genocide, especially when there's a net growth in population. So that's one thing that I kind of take issue with. The other thing is, I think I really take issue with this idea that an indigenous people can lose their indigenous status and that another indigenous people can gain it through conquering. And I think that's part of the problem with the discourse here. I think most of the people here are pretty concerned with human rights. They're probably people that want to get involved. But part of the problem is that if you don't do some basic research before you start, you're starting from a position that's not true. Now, there's going to be some people right now that are going to disagree with everything I say after that, because I'm going to tell you, Arab people are indigenous to the Hijaz. They're indigenous to the Arabian Peninsula. As a professor of Middle Eastern Studies, I'm sure you know that. They're not indigenous to the Levant. The people that are indigenous to the Levant are the Jewish people. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have rights of long-standing presence. Rights of long-standing presence, however, do not trump rights of indigenous status. Now, part of the problem I find with these courses, and the reason I wanted to come and hear what you have to say today, I think part of the problem is, in the Middle East especially, is that we don't, as soon as we use certain language, everybody else shuts down, and then there's no more discourse. And part of the problem that I have is when I have to listen to people saying, the Zionist oppressor. You know what? That's annoying to me, because I'll tell you right now, I feel that if we had a genocide conducted on us by the Zionists, we'd probably be living in a native North America right now. It's just not the same thing. So to compare the two, I find that really fallacious. I don't find that to be true.
What was your name?
Ryan Belrose.
Out of curiosity, when you start recognizing systematic patterns of
Yep.
same applications, say the appropriation of European colonial techniques used on people in the Arab Peninsula by Zionists, don't you think that's relevant to the situation? And don't you
Well,
think...
it would be. Okay, but here's the problem. Now, if we're talking about this through the framework...
Just 1 minute.
Sorry, okay.
It's not your presentation.
Oh, no, she asked me a question.
This is one. Two, like if you are taping us, I'm fine with it, because I'm not afraid. But you should ask people before you tape the class, or the presentations. You get the permissions of the people.
You have my permission.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So can I answer her question?
No, just 1 minute. If everyone is comfortable with being taped, I'm okay with that. If not, you could ask him to turn it off.
I'm not comfortable with being taped.
So,
Okay, well, I'll point the
you
camera
can,
to some.
but
I'm
you
just
can
curious,
record
why
it.
is this being taped also?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Why not?
We'll talk a bit.
I don't mind.
Yes, but there's
Who
usually
are you?
reason
Why are you
things are
taping?
taped, so
Yeah.
is it
What's your
just
name?
for the heck of it? Like,
Probably.
Who's
So,
the guy that's
I
taking
myself, I don't have a problem
Okay,
with it.
yeah.
But I think it's unethical to tape. I don't know
We
what
should be
you
taping.
without